Good morning. Am I on? I know it's going to be there eventually. There, it is there. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this circle. Welcome to this morning at Southminster Steinhauer. We are a community that gathers in this circle, and whether you've been a part of this circle regularly, or you're new to this circle, or you're making your way here after a while, we're all a part of it, and we are welcome, just as we are this morning, to this place where we gather. We gather on this second weekend of spring break, and we recognize all those who are traveling in this week who are not here with us, that would normally be here, and that includes our dear friend Nancy, who finds herself in Moncton, New Brunswick, with her father, attending to his needs there and setting things in place for him after a short hospitalization. So our thoughts are with her this morning. We do gather here together. As we do, we recognize that this is always a place to wonder. It's always a place to question. We do a lot of things when we come here together. We celebrate in joy. We also come together in sorrow. We walk with each other regardless of what's happening in our lives. That is community. And so as we gather here in this circle, we recognize that our place is here, and we're welcome, regardless of what's happening in our life, how we walk, where we're walking, and what we're walking through. It's in gratitude for who we are together, for this place and for this land and for the inheritance that we share with our Treaty 6 brothers and sisters and our Métis friends and all who call this land our ancestral and adopted home, that we gather here to express our thanks. We are all people in relationship. And so we recognize that in tangible ways as well, not just in words, but in ways that connect us in relationship with those adopted and those whose land we borrow for a time. This is our 7th week in a series of celebrating the wisdom of the elders' teachings. There are 6 banners on the side walls that represent the themes and the art that we've explored over these past weeks, and behind me is our 7th. And so today we focus on the theme of love as one of these elders' teachings, a theme not uncommon to the Christian experience, a theme not uncommon to any spiritual experience. Love is at the center. We have gratitude and give many thanks to the artist who's created these banners. His name is Arthur Gallant, and he's not a man who likes a lot of fanfare about himself, but he is here this morning, and I invite us to find him and meet him after our gathering today, and perhaps to express our gratitude for the work that he's done for us and for the beautiful art that he's created. And on behalf of all of us, I'll just say to Arthur, thank you. As we gather, we do so with words, but it's so much more fun to do so with singing. So let's warm the space, let's get our voices in tune, and let's really welcome each other with a song.
You know every
We have to wait till the end of the song to do as it says. As I spoke a moment ago, we're grateful for a great number of things. And as a symbol of that gratitude, we light a candle in our midst. Light is a symbol that not only shows our gratitude, but it shows the light of life that glows, regardless of where we are, regardless of what stage or age we're at. The light of life shines of those who are past, those who are right beside us, and those who will come in the future. We recognize this light as that which connects us, the light within, the light among, the light between us. And so we're grateful for this lighted candle, for this symbol in our center that focuses us, that draws us toward each other, and that draws us toward all that's sacred and meaningful. May it be a reminder as we continue to gather in this hour of that connection and of that sacredness. Let's strengthen our intentions with our words, offered as we have every week in this series, with a prayer by Stan Mackay, the United Church of Canada's first Indigenous minister, who was from Fisher River Cree Nation and moderator of our church from 94 to 97. We gather in this place and at this time to let his words continue to speak as we pray them this morning. We come with thanksgiving for our very breath, the warmth of sun, and the sustaining waters, for life all around us, the plants, soft grasses, and sheltering trees, for the ones that crawl, those that swim, and those that fly, for the four-legged and the two-legged, all our relations. We celebrate the diversity in creation as reflected in the four winds from the four directions. We especially honor the many peoples with their many gifts for understanding our shared life on the earth. We strive to live out the 7 sacred teachings: respect, love, honesty, courage, humility, wisdom, truth. These teachings enable us to live in harmony with ourselves, with our neighbors, and all the created earth. May it be so. Amen. It's our time for all ages, and although on this spring break we have, I don't think any, we have some little people, yay! You snuck in behind me. Great. So this way, now I can sit here and read this story. We all love stories. Don't worry, I wasn't going to skip the story. Oh, it's a favorite today. It's not the whole story, but it's a piece of it. It's called The Velveteen Rabbit. And it's by Marjorie Williams, and it was written quite a long time ago. And before I start reading, I want to tell you something, because we don't use the word velveteen very much. It sounds like it's a kind of cheese or something, but it's not. Velveteen is what this stuffed bunny's made of. It's kind of like a soft, furry kind of feeling stuff. There was once a velveteen rabbit, and in the beginning he was really splendid. He was fat and bunchy, as a rabbit should be. His coat was spotted brown and white. He had real thread whiskers, and his ears were lined with pink satin. On Christmas morning, when he sat wedged in the top of the boy's stocking with a sprig of holly between his paws, the effect was very charming. There were other things in the stocking, nuts and oranges and a toy train and chocolate almonds and a clockwork mouse, but the rabbit was the best of all. For at least 2 hours the boy loved him, and then aunts and uncles came over for dinner, and there was a great rustling of tissue paper and unwrapping of presents, and in the excitement of looking at all the new presents, the Velveteen Rabbit was forgotten. For a long time he lived in the toy cupboard or on the nursery floor, and no one thought very much about him. He was naturally shy, and being only made of velveteen, some of the more expensive toys snubbed him. The mechanical toys were very superior and looked down upon everyone else. They were full of modern ideas, and they pretended they were real. The rabbit could not claim to be real or a model of anything, for this rabbit didn't know that real rabbits existed. He thought they were all stuffed with sawdust like him. And he understood that sawdust was quite old-fashioned, and you should really never mention it to people. Between them all, the poor little rabbit was made to feel, the poor little rabbit was made to feel himself very insignificant and common, and the only person who was kind to him at all was the rocking horse. The rocking horse had lived longer in the nursery than any of the others. He was so old that his brown coat was bald in patches and showed the seams underneath, and most of the hairs in his tail had been pulled out to string necklaces. He was wise, for he had seen a long string of mechanical toys arrive to boast and swagger, and then eventually break their springs and pass away. And he knew that they were only toys and would never turn into anything else. For nursery magic is very strange and wonderful, and only those playthings that are old and wise and experienced, like the rocking horse, understood all about it. One day, Rabbit at the side of the nursery, and he turned to the rocking horse and said, "What is real?" Does it mean having things that buzz inside you and a stick-out handle? Real isn't how you're made, said the rocking horse. It's a thing that happens to you. When a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real. Does it hurt? Asked the rabbit. Sometimes, said the rocking horse, for he was always truthful. When you're real, you don't mind being hurt a little. Does it happen all at once, like being wound up, he asked, or bit by bit? No, it doesn't happen all at once, said the horse. You become. It takes a long time. That's why it doesn't often happen to people who break easily, or have sharp edges, or who have to be carefully kept all the time. Generally, by the time you're real, most of your hair has been loved off, and your eyes drop out, and you get loose in the joints and very shabby. But these things don't matter at all, because once you're real, you can't be ugly, except to people who don't understand. I suppose you are real, said the rabbit. And then he wished he hadn't said it, because he thought the horse might be sensitive, but the horse only smiled. The boy's uncle made me real, he said. That was a great many years ago, but once you're real, you can't become unreal again. It lasts forever. The rabbit sighed. He thought it would be a long time before this magic called real ever happened to him. He wished he could become real, to know what it felt like, and yet the idea of growing shabby and losing his eyes and whiskers was kind of sad. He wished that he could become real without those uncomfortable things happening to him. So now there was a person called Nana who ruled the nursery. Sometimes she took no notice of the playthings lying about, and sometimes for no reason whatever, like a great wind, and hustled all the toys away into cupboards. She called this tidying up. And the toys all hated it, especially the tin ones. The rabbit didn't mind it so much, for wherever he was thrown, he came down softly. One evening when the boy was going to bed, he couldn't find the dog that always slept with him. Nana was in a hurry, and it was too much trouble to hunt for dogs at bedtime, so she simply looked around her, and seeing that the toy cupboard door stood open, she made a swoop. "Here," she said, "take your old bunny. He'll do to sleep with." And she dragged the rabbit out by one ear and put him into the boy's arms. That night, and for many nights after, the Velveteen Rabbit slept in the boy's bed. At first, he found it rather uncomfortable, for the boy hugged him very tight, and sometimes he rolled over on him, and sometimes he pushed him so far under the pillow that the rabbit could scarcely breathe. And he missed, too, those long night hours in the nursery when all the house was quiet, and his talks with the rocking horse. But very soon he grew to like it, because the boy used to talk to him, and made nice tunnels for him under the bed sheets that he said were like burrows that real rabbits lived in. And they had splendid games together in whispers when Nana had gone away to her supper and left the nightlight burning on the mantelpiece. And when the boy dropped off to sleep, the rabbit would snuggle down close under his warm chin and dream, with the boy's hands clasped close round him all night long. And so time went on, and the little rabbit was very happy, so happy that he never noticed how his beautiful velveteen fur was getting shabbier and shabbier. And his tail was coming unsewn. It was kind of loose. And all the pink rubbed off his nose where the boy had kissed him. Spring came, they had long days in the garden, and wherever the boy went, the rabbit went too. He had rides in the wheelbarrow, picnics on the grass, lovely fairy huts built for him under the raspberry canes. And once when the boy was called away suddenly to dinner, the rabbit got left out on the lawn. Long after night came, and Nana had to come and look for him because the boy couldn't go to sleep and without the rabbit. So he was wet through with dew and quite yucky smelling from diving in holes the boy had made for him in the flower bed. And Nana grumbled as she rubbed him off with the corner of her apron. "You must have your old bunny," she said. "Fancy all that fuss for one little toy." And the boy sat up in bed and stretched out his hands. "Give me my bunny," he said. "You mustn't say that. He isn't a toy. He's real." When the little rabbit heard that, he was happy, for he knew that what the rocking horse had said was true at last. The nursery magic had happened to him, and he was no longer. He was real. The boy himself. Night, he was almost too happy to sleep. And so much love stirred in his little sawdust heart that it almost burst. And into his boot-button eyes that had long ago lost their shine, there came a look of wisdom and beauty that only came with being real. That's the end of that section of the book. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's longer than that. Oh, that's so fun to think of a toy becoming real because it was loved. Love is important for toys, clearly, the Velveteen Bunny tells us. But I think it might be important for everyone. We all might need love to be real. So I thought that just for 1 minute here, we could do something really easy. I'm going to ask everyone in the room how we show our love to the people in our family, to the people the closest to us. How do we show love to them? What do you think? Hugs. That's a good answer. We hug people that we love. That's a good answer. What's another way we show love to our family? Oh, someone over here said something. You spend time with them. Of course. It's a way we show our love. And someone said something here. Oh, dog sitting. Oh, yes. We do things for people, right? When we care about them, when we love them, we do things for them. That's exactly right. And do you know, we show love in very many ways. It's not just one way. And you know what? With friends, maybe sometimes with friends we hug them, but maybe with some friends we show love not with hugs or not with kisses and not with a lot of fancy things like that, but sometimes we show love just by really simple things, like spending time, or giving someone a smile, or just being friendly. It's a way to show love too. So there's so many ways, and it's really exciting that we can... we listen too. Yeah, to have someone to listen to and that will listen to us. That's really great. So with all these many ways to love each other, it's the way we become real, like the Velveteen Rabbit. And it's great because we can spend a lifetime finding new ways to do it. So, with that, we're going to sing a song.
A reading from Colossians chapter 3, verses 12 to 14. As ones who are full of the sacred, loved and loving, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience. Bear with one another, and, if anyone has a complaint against another, forgive each other, just as you have experienced forgiveness. And above all, clothe yourselves with love, which binds everything together in perfect harmony. These are the words to those living in intentional communities in the early first century. May we find wisdom for our living.
All
a poem entitled Spring by Mary Oliver. Somewhere a black bear has just risen from sleep and is staring down the mountain all night in the brisk and shallow restlessness of early spring. I think of her, her 4 black fists flicking the gravel, her tongue like a red fire touching the grass, the cold water. There is only one question: how to love this world. I think of her rising like a black and leafy ledge to sharpen her claws against the silence of the trees. Whatever else my life is, with its poems and its music and its glass cities, it is also this dazzling darkness coming down the mountain, breathing and tasting. All day I think of her, her white teeth, her wordlessness, her perfect love. This is the insight of a contemporary poet. May we find wisdom for our living. Some of you know that I trained as a musician, and I did some of that training on an instrument called the pipe organ. You know, that giant instrument found in churches and concert halls with the massive pipes, the longest of which are either 16 or 32 feet long. And because the sound of a pipe organ is made entirely from air passing through those pipes, there are a lot of pipes because there's one pipe for every pitch, and there's one pipe for every pitch on every stop on the organ. So a good-size organ may have maybe 30 to 40 stops, and a keyboard has approximately 48 keys on it, and there's often about 2 or 3 or 4 manuals. So that's a lot of pipes, is my point. Yeah, that's a lot of pipes. And with all those pipes and all that air, sometimes, actually more accurately to say, usually something goes wrong. Organs have been around for a long time, much before there were things like electronic devices to control the pipes. It was all manual. It was all with wooden dowels and valves and things made out of natural materials. So things going wrong is a commonplace for organists. Organists are used to things going wrong with their instrument. I guess any musician is used to things going wrong with their instrument, but there is a lot to go wrong. The most common is probably the reeds. Some pipes are called reeds because they have a reed inside them that vibrates with the air, and those going out of tune is probably the number 1 problem. But the number 2 problem is probably a cipher. A cipher on a pipe organ is when a valve that's supposed to stop the air from going through the pipe is not stopping the air from going through the pipe. And it happens usually just one pipe at a time, so that pipe, of course, is one pitch, and it won't stop. And because ciphers never happen when there's no one around, It always happens at the worst possible times. So, what happens if it were about to happen right before you had to play something important? Well, you can choose not to use that stop or that note, which is harder. But you find out which note it is, and as is the case in many cases, you improvise. And a good organist has to be an amazing improviser because things are always going wrong. So I have a recording of what happens when there's a cipher, and it's time to play something in the church, like maybe the offering, or maybe a hymn, or something. It's time to play something, and there's a cipher. What do? Well, you improvise around that note. And I want to play you a recording of an organist doing just that. You'll first hear the cipher, the note that's stuck, and then what the organist does with it. So here's some talent in improvisation. You do what you have to do. Now, here's what I love about this. This piece of music gets constructed on the spot out of this immovable and unstoppable note. Some of what the musician does that we heard is harmonic. It goes perfectly with that note. Some of what the musician does is dissonant. It works against the note. But that note isn't going anywhere, and that's good music that works dissonance and harmony together. And even though there was a lot going on, because the organ has a lot of other stops and a lot of other notes and a lot of other wind, sometimes we couldn't hear that cipher anymore. It was covered up. But regardless, it's still there. And it got me to thinking, isn't that a really great metaphor for our lives? We choose what note to sound in our life. We choose also what to put around those notes. Sometimes we have a choice of what's playing, and sometimes we don't. We have to decide, really, what's at the center of our value system. What is at the center of our lives, around which we'll create? What do we hold on to while other things change? What do we want to hear as the enduring theme, the enduring note of our lives? What will be the prevailing cipher? If we have to have one, what will it be in our life? What note should everyone hear coming from our pipes? Our last art panel depicts the sacred teaching of love. And underneath the word love, it says, care for one another. And it seems appropriate that love is the last panel that we're exploring, the last theme, the last wisdom teaching, because it might just sum it all up. It might be the one word we have that can speak to all of them. Since the tellers of stories started telling tales, love has been a theme. It's a hallmark of what it means to be a person of spirit. Within all the enduring religions of the world, there is a recognition that living a life infused with love is a sign of right relationship, of positive living, even of sacred presence. To use a phrase that I've heard many of our Indigenous friends use, honoring love would be to live life in a good way. The Mary Oliver poem Spring, among other things, depicts a world, our world, that knows exactly what it is to love. In this image of a black bear coming down the mountain, it shows what it might be to love, to simply be, to be as honest and real as possible. To do that is an act of perfect love. A flower to bloom, an animal to find food and eat, a bird to fly. Is this not love? As the poet says, my life is with its poems and its music and its glass cities. Also this dazzling darkness coming down the mountain, breathing and tasting. All day I think of her, her white teeth, her wordlessness, her perfect love. Nature and our ability to connect with it, to witness it, to be a part of it, is a great lesson in love. It's a great wisdom teaching in our lives. For Mary Oliver, it's a black bear. For each of us, it's something different. It's a particular place at the side of a lake, or a particular mountain hike that we've walked, or perhaps it's a beach by the ocean in a particular place, or a favorite bird that visits our backyard. Whatever it is, it's a book of wisdom for us to learn love in its expression of living life. So out of another book, there's this writing of one early Christian community to another. In the times following Jesus' death, groups of people started coming together who were inspired by the stories they were hearing of this teacher named Jesus. And they started to think that perhaps the best way to live the teachings he was teaching would be to live together in community and work it out that way. To see what it would be like to live together in community and see if they could follow what this guy was talking about. So they formed communities that tried to live out those values and those teachings, and we inherit a few letters to those communities, talking about the things you would talk about if you're trying to work out what it is to live in a good way with other people. The problems you're having, what are some possible solutions, how do we follow these teachings? And amid whatever challenges and squabbles the community of Colossae was having, and thus the letter to the Colossians, we have a teaching, a treatise on love. It's not the only one that we find in the Bible, but it's one of the best ones that we find there. And the writer uses a metaphor of clothing, comparing our choices of what we wear to our choices of how we live. So if you're dressing for cold weather, you put on some warm clothes. If you're dressing for the beach, you probably don't want your parka. You want something appropriate for that. In other words, we wear what's appropriate for dealing with the climate. In a similar way, this teaching instructs for us to select the things that are most appropriate in living a positive spiritual life, living well and attuned to our highest values. What should we put on? And the writer says, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, meekness, and patience, and above all, clothe yourselves with love, which can bind everything together in perfect harmony. love, the way we show caring, the way we act in generosity, in placing ourselves in the position of another to offer to them what we would want offered to us in a similar circumstance. That if we clothe ourselves in that attitude of caring, we'll find that things seem to hold together. Not just coincidentally, but perhaps because when we find friends that care about us, we want to care about them. When there are acts of care and love shown to us, we're inspired to show it back and to show it forward. I think that's what he means by love will bind things together in perfect harmony. That there is this sense of contagion with love, with caring. That it's very difficult for it to go unanswered. To phrase it like our children's author, this is the essence of being real. To be real, to live a real life, one that's fully alive, fully engaged in our world, is to make love our goal. The kind of give and take that rubs our fur off, that makes us a little less shiny, perhaps, that runs the risk of us losing buttons, losing hair, losing some of our stuffing. And like any good metaphor, whether it's becoming real by experiencing selfless love or it's being the truest version of our humanity as inspired by other animals, or whether it's putting on the clothing of love, we work to find our own specific and unique ways of doing that. That's the work of spiritual depth. That's why we're engaged in the spiritual life, is because we want to find ways to do that. It's good enough to say do it, but the work of spiritual depth is wrapping that love in the details of our own life. We all know lots of different kinds of people. There are those who, for example, would have heard this weekend of the flooding in Colombia and immediately went to their computer and found ways to donate to the need that was arising there. We all know people who are single-mindedly focused on their goal and their passion in life. And we all know people who can't take anything on apart from the important work and passion and cause that they're about. That's amazing. And we all know people who wrap their love in creating safe and loving homes for family, for making others part of their family and feeling that safety and that love. That they commit themselves to their loved ones in devotion and in small and big ways. And that's amazing. We all know people who dedicate their energy to the simple, everyday acts of kindness. The acts of compassion shown in friendship, their openness to stranger and friend alike, who will just be that person that if you were on the street needing a companion, you'd know who it was you'd need. And it's because of the way they've lived and the choices that they've made and the way they dedicate their energy to that simple, everyday kind of love. So the question really for us is, if love is our constant, if love is the cipher of our lives that is playing in the background, if we don't allow it to stop, if we let it ring, what will we learn? What will we change? What will we do? How will we speak? In what details will we create the notes around that cipher of love? And perhaps the way forward as individuals, as communities, as societies, the way to impact our world and set a direction for the future is to rely on the fact that we have this gift of being able to choose how we live it out. There are over 100 people in this room, and there will be over 100 or maybe double or triple or infinitely more than that ways of how we wrap ourselves in love, how we clothe ourselves in that love, just what we're doing and how we're doing it. And that's the amazing, hopeful, and wonderful part of this word. It gets interpreted by all of us in so many positive and wonderful ways. The ability for us to place a value and a principle at our center and say, I will choose to be about this. I will choose to make love my constant note. And I will not change it through all the other shifting circumstances of life. I cannot let that note change. And I think perhaps that's why in Arthur's wisdom, when creating these, he knew that love had to be the tallest banner, the longest banner. Because I think he knew that it would have to be in the middle then. So as each of the other banners grow in size, love will sit at our center. It will be our note, and we'll hear it play. Each time we look at it, each time we're reminded that it reflects something in us. So as we choose to clothe ourselves in this wonderful word, as we consider again how we live it out and how we fill out its harmonies in our life with what is real, what is tangible, acting from the best love that we're able. It's time to work to make it so every day of our lives. May it be at our center. Amen. This table to celebrate this ritual that we do every month. We use our imaginations quite a lot in the spiritual journey, and I invite us to imagine. Imagine friends that journey together, that learn together, that explore the spiritual life and help others to do the same. Imagine that a meal is shared among friends that honors the past and traditions, but that courses a new way forward. Because after all, this is their community, their family, their connection. Let's imagine that the wonder of bread and the gift of crushed grapes in its juice, gifts of earth and sky and the labor of many, are symbols of our search for the sacredness in which we live and move and have our being. Imagine that in bread broken and in a cup poured, there is a coming together of roots and heritage in the past, but also the future, open and hopeful, that meet together in the present, this sacred and unrepeatable moment. Let's imagine what it is to be hungry and thirsty. The joy of satisfying that hunger with food and that thirst with drink. And imagine that the quest for meaning and purpose is our ongoing hunger and thirst. And that we are ever searching and ever satisfying. Let's imagine a meal in which the whole world finds unity and peace. Far-fetched? A place where our highest ideals can take precedence over disagreements and entitlements. And now imagine that this table is our rehearsal, is our practice ground for living out our commitments to a world that all might break bread together. We don't need to imagine. All of it is here before us, in the metaphor, in the symbol of what this is. Come and eat and drink. These are symbols we share. Symbols of bread to feed hunger. Symbols of juice to stave thirst. They're signs of sacred presence with us, around us, in us, between us and all that is. These are symbols of shared quest, shared love. This is our bread for the journey and our cup of community. You're welcome at this table. Doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter if you're a member of this church or any church, if you're religious or spiritual or both or neither. It matters that you hunger and thirst for a journey. And it matters that we continue the quest. And it matters that we can find. You're welcome. Come. Love transforms. And so as this light is transformed into a new being, we recognize it goes with us in ever new ways. May the love that goes with us transform as well. Transform us, transform our lives, and transform the world. May we go in the peace and love that is ours. Love transforms.